Hey everyone! Today, I want to share a story about two students in my class. One was a genius, and the other struggled a lot. But what I learned from them changed the way I see people forever. In every classroom, there are students who stand out for different reasons. In my class, Alex was the one everyone admired. He was always the first to raise his hand, always got the highest scores, and never seemed to struggle with anything. Teachers praised him, and classmates looked up to him. Then there was Ben. He was different. Every time the teacher asked a question, he hesitated. His test scores were low, and his homework was often incomplete. Some students whispered behind his back, calling him slow or lazy. I never really thought about it. I just assumed Alex was naturally gifted, and Ben, maybe he just didn't care enough about school. But one day, something happened that made me realize how wrong I was. I never really paid much attention to Ben, at least not until one afternoon when I stayed behind to grab my notebook. That's when I saw him. Ben was sitting alone at his desk, staring at his math book with a frustrated look on his face. He had his pencil in his hand, but he wasn't writing. He just kept erasing the same problem over and over again. Curious, I walked closer. That's when I heard him mumble to himself.
Why can't I get this right? No matter how hard I try, I always mess up.
I stopped. Hard? I had always assumed he didn't care about studying. But looking at him now, I realized he did care. He was trying. He was just struggling. For the first time, I saw a different side of Ben. And suddenly, I started wondering, had we all been too quick to judge him? The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about what I saw. So, during lunch, I decided to talk to Ben. I sat next to him and asked, "Hey, do you need help with math?" He looked surprised, almost like no one had ever asked him that before. Then he sighed and said,
I do, but I don't think it will help. I study every night, but when I take a test, my mind just goes blank.
That's when he told me something I never expected.
I wake up at 5 a.m. to help my parents at the market before school. By the time I get home, I'm already so tired, but I still try to study. It's just hard.
I was speechless. All this time, we thought Ben wasn't trying, but the truth was he was working harder than any of us. He just didn't have the same time, the same energy, or the same support. At that moment, I felt ashamed. I had always admired Alex for being smart, but I had never admired Ben for his effort. And maybe that was the real mistake. That conversation with Ben stayed in my mind all day. I couldn't focus in class, and for the first time, I saw things differently. When the teacher handed back our math tests, I saw Alex smiling at his perfect score, just like always. And Ben, he looked at his paper, sighed, and stuffed it into his bag without a word. At that moment, I couldn't stay silent anymore. After class, I caught up with Alex. "Hey, do you think you could help Ben with math?" Alex raised an eyebrow.
Ben? He never studies.
I shook my head. That's not true. He does. He just doesn't have it easy like we do. For the first time, Alex looked thoughtful.
I never thought about that.
And honestly, neither had I until now. Maybe being smart wasn't just about getting the right answers. Maybe it was also about understanding others. That night, I kept thinking about Ben, his tired eyes, his quiet frustration, the way he stuffed his test into his bag like he didn't even want to see it. I used to think that being good at school was just about working hard. If you studied, you got good grades. Simple, right? But Ben was working hard, maybe even harder than me. At dinner, I told my mum about it. She listened quietly, then said,
Mia, not everyone starts from the same place. Some kids have to climb mountains just to reach where others are standing.
Her words hit me hard. I had never thought about it like that before. The next day at school, I watched Alex again. He answered every question perfectly, as if school was the easiest thing in the world. Then I glanced at Ben, who sat quietly, gripping his pencil. For the first time, I saw things differently. Maybe the real difference between Alex and Ben wasn't just talent, it was the road they had to take to get there. The next morning, I made a decision. Before class started, I walked up to Ben. Hey, do you want to study together after school? He looked at me, surprised.
You mean, like tutoring?
I nodded. More like helping each other. You're really good at history, and I could use some help with that. And maybe I can explain some math stuff in a way. That makes sense to you? For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then a small smile appeared on his face. That actually sounds nice. Later that day, I found Alex by his locker. Hey, do you think you could help Ben with math too? You're great at explaining things. Alex hesitated, but then shrugged.
I guess I could try.
That afternoon, the three of us sat in the library. Books open, pencils scribbling. Ben still struggled with equations, and I still got dates mixed up in history. But for the first time, it felt like we were all learning together. Maybe being smart wasn't just about knowing the answers. Maybe it was also about helping others find theirs.